right, so hopefully you discovered that you needed to have 3 more pennies in order to make 11 pennies altogether for your plate. Now, there's probably 2 different ways that you could have solved this problem, and you probably picked one of those 2 ways. You may have been a friend who used the counting back strategy, where you started at the bigger number and you counted backwards to the smaller number, or maybe you were a friend who did the counting up strategy, where you started at the smaller number and you counted up to the bigger number. Either way works for you, and either way works for me, as long as you can get to the correct answer, whichever way you choose. And that's what we're going to practice today. We're actually going to practice using the counting back strategy and the counting up strategy when it comes to subtraction. We can use them with addition and we can use them with subtraction, but since we're focusing on subtraction in Unit 3, we're going to practice mostly subtraction with counting back and counting up as some of our strategies. So let me go on to my next screen here and I can show you, give you an example of how we can use counting back and counting up for our subtraction strategies. Now you'll notice we have this nice little number line right here. They gave us this fancy dancy number line. It's fantabulous, so I don't have to bring one up on the screen. So I'll be using this number line. Now notice too that the numbers kind of don't really line up very well right here, but right here would be number 12 and then number 11 and then number 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. So it doesn't line up perfectly, but we'll get through this. One of the things that we need to do is we are going to use this subtraction problem, 10 minus 9, and we're going to practice with the counting back strategy first. So let me pick a nice pen color here. I like the color green. Okay, so I'm going to use the green pen first, and I'm going to show you how to use this number line to do the counting back strategy, and I'm going to start at 12, and I'm going to count back 9. Because that's what this problem is really telling me to do. Start at 10 and take away or count back 9. So here we go. I'm going to start at 12, and you can count with me if you'd like to. I'm going to count 9 hops back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Notice that I land right here on the number 3. So if I start at 12 and I count back 9, I get 3. Now, I wonder if I could use the counting up strategy and get the same thing. So I'm going to leave my 3 here in green, but I'm going to go down and I'm going to get my eraser, and I'm going to erase the lines that I made on the number line, the hops that I made here. Because I want to see if we can do the same thing with a counting up strategy to see if we can get the same answer. I suspect that we probably can, but let me pick purple here because you know I love my purple. Okay, so this time I'm going to use the numbers that I have right here in my problem because I'm double checking to make sure that this 3 is really the answer that I want to have. When I use the counting up strategy, I want to start with the smaller number and go up. When I use the counting back strategy, I can start with the larger number and go down. So I'm going to start with my small number because I'm counting up this time. I'm going to start it at 9 and I'm going to count up to 12. I'm not counting up 12 because I'm not adding 12. I'm going to start at 9 and count up to the number 12. And I'm going to see if I get the same number of hops. So let me find my little dot for my little line here for 9, and I'm going to go start at 9 and hop. Oop, let me get my pen here. Start at 9. Come here, pen. Oop, got to get off my eraser. Okay, now we got it. Start at 9 and hop to 10, then hop to 11, and then hop to 12. Well, I count the hops that I have here. We have 1, 2, 3 hops. So I can count backwards and get 3, or I can count forwards and get 3. And it doesn't really matter which strategy I use. As long as I am using it correctly, I could do a counting back strategy or a counting up strategy and still get the same number. Now, I'm wondering which one I should probably use the most for this. I think that it would probably be easier to use the counting up strategy, what I just did here in purple, than to do the counting back strategy. And I'm wondering if you know why I'm thinking that would be easier. So I'm looking at this problem and I'm seeing that I have 12 and I need to take away 9. And that's a lot of hops if you think about it. 9 hops on the number line is a lot of hops on the number line. And I don't want to have to do that much work. I want to do smaller work, just a little bit of work. So I think in this case, using the counting up strategy would be easier because if I start at 9 and I count up to 12, I only have to go 1, 2, 3 hops. But if I start at 12, let me go back to my color green here. If I start at 12 and I count back 9, remember I had to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 hops. It's a lot of hops. I have a lot less hops with my purple 3 hops here than I do with my 9 green hops, don't I? So let's think about that as we go on to the next one. Okay, so on my next screen I have another problem here. We have 11 minus 3. So I'm going to solve it both ways because that's what we're going to do today. We're practicing how we can count back and count up and still find the correct answer for our subtraction problem. Subtraction is cool like that. So I'm going to pick red this time just to change things up a little bit. This time I need to start at 11 and I need to take away or subtract 3. So I'm going to count back 3 first because I'm going to use the counting back strategy first. So I'm going to start at 11 and I'm going to count 1, 2, 3. And it looks like I land right here on the number 8. So I'll put that 8 right here so I don't forget. Now, remember, if you are a friend that likes to count up, you can use the counting up strategy too. So let me erase my red lines here and my little red number 8 line there. And let me pick a different color. Let's go with blue this time. Okay, so if you like to count up, you want to start with the small number and count up to the big number. Don't count the big number up, but count up to the big number. So this time I'm going to start at 3 and count hops until I get to number 11. So here we go. I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And here I've landed on the number 11. So I went 8 hops again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I got 8 hops. I got the answer 8. Or when I went backwards, 3 hops, 1, 2, 3, I landed on the number 8. Let me put that back there in red. 1, 2, 3 hops. There I landed on the number 8. Now, let's think about this again. Remember, I kind of like having to do just a little bit of work, not a lot of work. So to me, 3 hops is a lot easier than doing 8 hops. I know 8 hops doesn't seem like a lot, but you know, if you have to jump 8 or you have to jump 3, I think 3 is a little bit easier. So I think in this case, because we're taking away a small number, it makes sense to use the counting back strategy for this one, where I start at 11 and I only have to count back 3 to get to my answer. Now again, it depends on what you're comfortable with. If you are a friend that really likes to count up instead of counting back, there's nothing wrong with you starting at 3 and counting up until you get to the number 11 to see what number you have. That's fine. It doesn't really matter. I'm just trying to show you an easy way to do it where you don't have to do a lot of counting. But really, it's really what you're most comfortable with. All right, let's practice. I believe there's one more here on my screen. There's more than one more. There's 4 more. Oh my goodness. Okay, so we can do this. No worries, friends. We got this. Okay. This would be a perfect time to decide if we want to use the counting up strategy or the counting back strategy to solve the problems. So remember, if you're starting at the number and you're counting back or taking away a large number, you probably want to count up from the small number instead of counting back the big number. Or if you are starting at the big number and you're counting back a small number, you probably want to count back instead of counting up. Now, I'll explain that again in just a second. So with this one, 9 minus 7, I have two choices. I can start at 9 and I can count back 7. Or I could start at 7 and I can count up to 9. Remember, I'm counting up to that number, not counting that number. So I'm thinking, for me personally, it would be a lot easier if I started at 7 and I counted up to 9. Because then, let me get my pen back out here. All I have to do when I start at 7 and I count up to 9, I go 1, 2 hops. And if I have 9 and I take away 7, I should only have 2 left over. Now I can double check that by counting here. I'm not going to write hops. Actually, you know what? I'll write the hops underneath here in black just for your visual. But let me show you, just to make sure it's absolutely the same. I could have started at 9 and counted back 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I still would have landed on the number 2, right? But I think it was a lot easier to just start at 7 and count 2 hops, 1, 2, until I got to the number 9. That's just me. I think that would be a lot easier. But again, it's whatever you're comfortable with. All right, let me erase these little lines real fast, and then we're going to move on to the next one over, 18 minus 3. Now, as we look at 18 minus 3, let me pick a color here while I'm at it. Let's go with gray. I don't think I've ever used gray. So if I'm looking at 18 and I'm taking away 3, I'm noticing that I don't really have to take away a big number. 3 is not a big number at all. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at 18 and I'm going to count back 3 to see what number I land on. So here we go. Here's 18. I'm going to count 1. Oops, got to get my pen back. Left it on the eraser. Here we go. I'm going to count 1, 2, 3. If I had 18 and I took away 3, I went to 15. Now, that's the counting back strategy. Remember, I used that because I was only counting back 3 spaces, which doesn't take me very long to do. But let's double check it. I could start at 3 and count up to 18 and see if I get the same number. I'll do it underneath just so you can see it differently. So this time I'm going to start all the way down here at 3, and I need to count all the way back up here to 18. And I'm going to count the number of hops that I make until I get to the number 18. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. There I stopped at the number 18. So I still got 15 as my answer when I counted up from the number 3. Sorry, my screen kind of disappeared there. But I think it was a lot easier to start at 18 and count back 3 hops, 1, 2, 3, to get to that answer than it was to start at 3 and go all the way up to 18. So I think in this case, the counting back strategy was a lot easier. All right, let me erase my colored lines here on my number line again. There's a lot to erase this time, so bear with me here because you know I am finger writing and you know how Mrs. Tucker loves to finger write. It's just so fantastic. Makes for some really strong fingers. Okay, here we go. Get off the eraser before I forget. Okay, let's try the next one. Switch to blue. Here we go. I'm going to start at 15 and I'm going to take away or count back 12. That's a lot of hops to count back. So I think I would rather start at 12 and count hops, count up till I get to 15. So I'm going to kind of do it in reverse. Instead of starting at 15 and counting back 12 hops, that's a lot of hops, I'm going to start at 12 and count up till I get the number 15. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. So if I start at 15 and I take away 12, My hops are telling me I should have 3 left over. Now I'm going to do it the hard way. I'm going to start at 15 and I'm going to count back 12. I'm going to do it the hard way, but let's just double check just to make sure that I did it correctly. I should still get 3 as my answer. So here we go. 15, I'm going to count back 12 hops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Look at that. I land on the number 3. So either way, I could start at the smaller number and count up to the bigger number and count 3 hops. Or if I really wanted to work hard, I could start at the bigger number and count back all those hops to find out that I would still land on the same number. All right, let's practice with one more. Here we go. Erasing with my finger as fast as I can. Wish I could make this eraser a little bit bigger, but it's just not happening. Maybe I can ask for a big eraser for my board from Santa for Christmas. Who knows? Ooh, Santa, Christmas. There's a thought. Okay, get off the eraser, Mrs. Tucker, before you forget. All right, here we go. Purple for the last one, because purple is my favorite. Okay, here we go. We have the last one. We're going to start at 13 and take away 2. Well, that's a small number. That's only 2. So I think I'm going to do the counting back strategy for this one because it makes a lot of sense for me to start at 13 and only count back 2. So let's see here. Here's 13. And let me go 1, 2. And I believe I landed on the number 11, even though it's hard to tell because this isn't quite lined up the way it's supposed to be. It is on the number 11. Now, just to show that we can do the counting up strategy too and still get the same answer, I'll do it that way too, just to show you. What color haven't I used here? Red. There we go. I'm going to start at 2 and I'm going to count up until I get to the number 13. I'm going to count up my hops until I get to the number 13. And let's see if I get the same number of hops. So all the way down here to 2. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There you go. I landed on the number 13 and I counted 11 hops. So, friends, it doesn't really matter which strategy you use, but I would recommend if you have just a few to take away, that you do the counting back strategy because you're only counting back a couple of hops or counting back a couple of numbers. But if you have a lot to take away, like 7 or 12, I would probably start at that number and count up to the bigger number that you started with in the problem. That's just my suggestion. But again, it really depends on which strategy you prefer to use. Okay, let me switch screens here for just a second